Welcome to the Timeless Tales Library, where stories become moonbeams that illuminate the path to restful sleep. I'm Oliver, your host, and tonight I'll be sharing a soothing tale to ease your mind and guide you gently towards sleep. The Timeless Tales Library is made possible by listeners like you. If you've found comfort here, please subscribe and help us continue creating these peaceful stories. As you settle in, comment below and let me know where you are in the world tonight, and share a place you dream of, a story taking you to perhaps the ancient cedar forests of Lebanon, a thatched cottage in the Cotswolds, the volcanic landscapes of Iceland, or a riverboat drifting down the Amazon. Your ideas keep our little library glowing bright. Sherlock Holmes solves the midnight bakery murder, but fall asleep first. This story is about a foggy London evening where you accompany Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson to investigate a gentle mystery at a beloved bakery where the scent of warm bread mingles with whispers of intrigue and where every clue leads closer to rest. Now, close your eyes and allow your body to settle. The day is behind you and its sounds are fading. Notice the quiet around you, a soft blanket of stillness. Let that stillness flow into your mind, calming the constant chatter of thoughts. Now, as you breathe, imagine a doorway opening in your mind. This is a special door, one that leads to a place of complete rest and calm. Beyond it lies the Timeless Tales Library. This is a place made just for you, a haven where stories are whispered, not read. Every word is like a gentle breeze, every sentence a soft note of music. Tonight, we step through that door together. Your bed is a private armchair by a crackling fire, the blankets a cozy throw, and the world outside has faded away. There is only this moment, this quiet room, and the tale about to begin. Let the story be your guide, a quiet current to carry you towards sleep. The fog rolls in from the Thames tonight, soft and thick as wool, wrapping itself around the gas lamps of Baker Street until their golden glow becomes something dreamlike and distant. You stand at the foot of the familiar steps leading up to 221B, your hand resting on the iron railing, cool and solid beneath your palm. The evening air carries the particular quiet that belongs only to London after dark, the muffled clip-clop of a distant hansom cab, the gentle hiss of gas jets, the settling sounds of a city preparing for sleep. Above, through the window, you can see the warm amber light of Holmes's sitting room. The curtains shift slightly in the breeze, and you catch a glimpse of the detective's silhouette, tall and lean, pacing before the fireplace, as he so often does when his mind is engaged with some puzzle. Dr. Watson sits in his customary chair, pipe in hand, the picture of comfortable companionship. You climb the 17 steps slowly, your footfall soft on the worn wood, each step taking you further from the chill of the street and closer to the warmth that waits above. Mrs. Hudson has left the door ajar for you, as she always does when Holmes is expecting a visitor. You push it open gently, and the familiar scents greet you, old books and pipe tobacco, the faint medicinal tang of chemicals from Holmes's experiments, and tonight, surprisingly, the sweet aroma of fresh bread. It's this last scent that seems unusual, out of place in these bachelor quarters, and it draws you forward with curiosity as soft as the fog outside. "Ah," says Holmes, turning from the window as you enter. His grey eyes catch the firelight, and there's the ghost of a smile at the corners of his mouth. Punctual as always. "Watson, our friend has arrived. Excellent. The night awaits, though I promise you, this particular case requires nothing more strenuous than a gentle walk and an observant eye." Watson rises with a warm greeting, and you settle into the chair he offers, feeling the horsehair cushion yield beneath you. The fire crackles softly in the grate, and Holmes moves to pour you a cup of tea from the pot that steams on the side table. The china is delicate, painted with tiny blue flowers, and the tea itself is fragrant with bergamot Earl Grey, your favourite, though you've never mentioned this to Holmes. He simply knows, as he knows so many things, through observation and that remarkable deductive faculty of his. "I've been asked," Holmes begins, settling himself into his chair with the languid grace of a cat, "to look into a most peculiar matter at Hartley's Bakery on Marylebone Lane. You know the establishment, perhaps? It's been there for 40 years, run by old Samuel Hartley and his daughter Margaret. They're known throughout London for their exceptional sourdough and those marvellous honey cakes that seem to capture summer in every bite. You sip your tea and listen as Holmes continues, his voice taking on that particular rhythm he uses when relating the details of a case, measured, almost melodic, designed to paint a picture as much as to convey information. This very morning, as Margaret opened the shop at her usual hour of 5:30, she discovered something most unusual. The day's bread had already been baked. 30 loaves of their finest sourdough, golden and perfect, cooling on the racks. The ovens were still warm. The kitchen was immaculate, as though invisible hands had worked through the night and tidied everything away before disappearing into the darkness. "Extraordinary," murmurs Watson, relighting his pipe. The tobacco smoke curls upward in lazy spirals, adding its own warmth to the room's atmosphere. "Indeed," Holmes agrees. But here is where the matter becomes more curious still. This is the third such occurrence in as many nights. Each morning, the same phenomenon, bread mysteriously baked, the shop prepared for the day's trade, all accomplished between the hours of midnight and dawn by someone who leaves no trace, no sign, nothing but the gift of perfectly executed labour. You cradle the warm teacup in your hands and feel yourself being drawn into the gentle mystery of it. There's something soothing about a puzzle with such benevolent results. A crime, if crime, it is that harms no one and leaves only the scent of fresh bread in its wake. Margaret Hartley is convinced, Holmes continues, that the ghost of her late mother has returned to help in the bakery. Old Samuel says nothing, but Watson informs me that the man has seemed deeply troubled these past days, barely sleeping, growing thinner and more withdrawn. "I examined him just yesterday," Watson confirms. "Medically, there's nothing wrong with him that rest and peace of mind wouldn't cure, but he's clearly distressed by these events, though he refuses to discuss them." Holmes rises and moves to the window, drawing back the curtain to look out at the fog-shrouded street below. "I suggested to Margaret that we might keep watch tonight. She agreed readily enough, anything to understand what's happening and to ease her father's mind. The three of us shall walk to Marylebone Lane presently. It's only a quarter-hour's journey in this fog, and the night air will do us good." You finish your tea and set the cup down gently on its saucer. The prospect of venturing out into the London night with Holmes and Watson fills you with a peculiar contentment, the same feeling one gets when settling into a favourite story before sleep, the comfort of knowing that you're in capable hands, that the journey ahead, however mysterious, will be safe and gently paced. The three of you don your coats and hats, and Holmes takes up his stick, not the weighted one he carries when danger might be expected, but his walking stick of polished oak with the silver handle, perfect for a leisurely evening stroll. Mrs. Hudson appears from her rooms below as you descend the stairs, pressing a small flask of brandy into Watson's hands. "In case of the cold," she says, though her eyes twinkle with affection for her strange tenants and their nocturnal habits. The street outside is transformed by fog into something from a dream. The gas lamps float like moons in the mist, their light diffused and soft, creating pools of gentle gold that guide your way. Your footsteps echo softly on the cobblestones, and the fog muffles all the harsh edges of the city, turning it into a place of whispers and shadows and quiet mystery. Holmes walks with his hands clasped behind his back, his head tilted slightly forward in that attitude of concentration you've come to recognize. Watson strolls beside you, occasionally pointing out some landmark made ghostly and romantic by the fog, the entrance to Regent's Park, barely visible through the mist, or the silhouette of a church spire rising like a dark finger into the clouded sky. Fog such as this, Holmes remarks, his voice soft and contemplative, has always seemed to me a natural companion to mystery. It obscures, certainly, but it also reveals, it shows us the world differently, strips away the mundane and everyday, and allows us to see with fresh eyes. On a clear day, Marylebone Lane is simply another London street. But on a night like this, it becomes something else entirely, a passage into another realm perhaps, where bakers' ghosts ply their trade and mysteries unfold as gently as rising dough. You turn from Baker Street onto Marylebone Lane, and the character of the neighbourhood shifts subtly around you. Here, the buildings crowd closer together, shops and homes pressed shoulder to shoulder like old friends. The windows are mostly dark, their occupants long since retired, but here and there a light still burns, an invalid, unable to sleep, perhaps, or someone keeping vigil over a sick child, or simply a fellow soul who finds the nighttime hours more congenial than the day. Hartley's bakery sits midway down the lane, its bow-fronted window dark, but the glass still bearing the gilt lettering that has announced its presence for 40 years. Hartley and daughter, bakers of distinction, Est. 1858. Holmes produces a key that Margaret Hartley has provided, and he unlocks the door with care, pushing it open to reveal the interior of the shop. The smell that greets you is indescribable in its comfort: flour and yeast, sugar and butter, cinnamon and vanilla, all the warm scents of baking blended together into an aroma that speaks of home and safety and simple pleasures. The shop itself is tidy and charming, with its wooden counter worn smooth by decades of use, its shelves ready to receive tomorrow's loaves, and its ancient till sitting like a copper guardian over the day's transactions. Holmes lights a small lamp and keeps the flame low, casting just enough light to see by without announcing your presence to any watchers outside. He leads you through the shop and into the kitchen beyond, and here the bakery reveals its true heart. The kitchen is larger than you expected, with two great brick ovens dominating one wall, their iron doors closed now, but radiating a faint residual warmth from the day's baking. Work tables stand in neat rows, their surfaces scrubbed clean and dusted with the lightest veil of flour that no amount of cleaning ever quite removes from a working bakery. Measuring cups and wooden spoons hang from hooks, mixing bowls are stacked in graduated sizes, and in the corner, covered with a damp cloth, you can see the distinctive shape of a sourdough starter in its ceramic crock, the living yeast culture that has been fed and maintained by the Hartley family for generations. The secret heart of their bread's distinctive flavour. "We shall wait here," Holmes says quietly, settling himself on a stool near the far wall, where he can observe both the ovens and the rear entrance that leads to the small courtyard behind the building. "Make yourselves comfortable. I suspect we have some hours before anything occurs, if indeed anything occurs at all tonight." Watson finds a chair and positions it near the work table, and you sit on a wooden bench that runs along one wall, its surface smooth with age and use. Holmes extinguishes the lamp, and darkness folds around you like a blanket. The only light comes from the faint glow of the ovens and the dim illumination that filters through the kitchen windows from the fog-obscured street lamps outside. Time in the darkness takes on a different quality. Minutes stretch and soften, becoming elastic and dreamlike. You can hear the gentle breathing of your companions, the settling sounds of the old building around you, the distant chime of a church bell marking the quarter hours. Your eyes adjust slowly to the darkness, and shapes emerge from the gloom, the curve of a mixing bowl, the straight edge of a table, the rectangular bulk of the ovens. Holmes is utterly still, a darker shadow against the wall, and you know that behind his closed eyes his mind is racing, cataloguing every sound, every scent, every subtle change in the atmosphere. Watson shifts occasionally, and you can picture him fighting the drowsiness that must be creeping over him in the warmth and quiet of the kitchen. You yourself feel sleep beginning to tug at the edges of your consciousness. The darkness is so complete, the quiet so profound, and the warmth of the kitchen so like the warmth of blankets on a cold night. Your head grows heavy, and you let it rest against the wall behind you, your eyes half closed, watching the dim shapes of the kitchen through your lashes. The church bell strikes midnight, its notes muffled by fog and distance, and the sound seems to come from very far away, from another world entirely. 12 slow chimes, marking the threshold between one day and the next, the hour when, according to folklore and fairy tales, magic is most likely to occur. In the silence that follows the final chime, you hear it the soft sound of a key turning in a lock, not the front door through which you entered, but the rear door that opens onto the courtyard. The sound is so gentle, so careful, that you might have missed it entirely if you hadn't been listening in the perfect stillness of the night. The door opens with the slightest whisper of hinges, and a figure enters the kitchen. You can see it only as a silhouette at first, a shape darker than the surrounding darkness, moving with quiet familiarity through the room. There's no hesitation in the movement, no fumbling or uncertainty. Whoever this is knows the bakery as well as they know their own home. The figure moves to the far wall and lights a single candle, and in its gentle glow you can finally see clearly. It's an old man, thin and stooped, with white hair that catches the candlelight like spun silver. He's wearing a nightshirt beneath his coat, and on his feet are carpet slippers that make no sound as he moves. His face is deeply lined, and there's a profound sadness in his eyes, but also a kind of peaceful resignation, as though he's doing something he must do, something that brings him both sorrow and comfort. It's Samuel Hartley himself, the bakery's owner, and as you watch, he begins to prepare for baking with the smooth efficiency of someone who has performed these actions 10,000 times before. Holmes doesn't move, doesn't speak, and neither do you or Watson. You simply watch as old Samuel measures flour with practiced hands, as he uncovers the sourdough starter and adds to it the precise mixture of flour and water that will keep it alive and vigorous. He works with a kind of meditation, his movements slow and deliberate, and there's something almost sacred in the way he handles the ingredients, the way he tends the starter that has been in his family for longer than he's been alive. He mixes the dough in a great ceramic bowl, his gnarled hands kneading and folding with a rhythm that seems as natural as breathing. The soft sound of the dough being worked fills the kitchen, a gentle, rhythmic slapping and folding that is one of the oldest sounds in human history, the sound of bread being made, of sustenance being prepared with care and skill. You watch as he shapes the loaves, forming them with gentle precision and placing them in proving baskets lined with cloth. He covers them tenderly and sets them aside to rise, and then he begins to stoke the ovens, feeding them small amounts of wood and coal until their interiors glow with perfect, even heat. While the dough rises and the ovens warm, Samuel sits on the stool that Holmes occupied earlier, and in the candlelight you can see tears running silently down his weathered cheeks. He doesn't sob or make any sound, but the tears flow freely, and he makes no move to wipe them away. Holmes rises finally, moving so quietly that he seems to materialize rather than walk across the floor. He stands before Samuel Hartley and speaks in a voice so gentle that you barely recognize it as belonging to the sometimes brusque detective. "Mr. Hartley," he says softly, "I think perhaps you might tell us about it. Sometimes the telling helps." Samuel looks up, and if he's surprised to find Holmes and his companions in the kitchen, he doesn't show it. Perhaps he's beyond surprise now, beyond everything except the grief and love that have driven him here in the deep hours of the night. "She taught me everything," he says, his voice rough with emotion and disuse. "My Alice. 42 years we worked side by side in this bakery. She was the master baker, not I. Everyone thought it was my skill that made our bread special, but it was hers. Every loaf, every sweet roll, every cake, her recipes, her techniques, her touch." He pauses, looking at his hands as though seeing them for the first time. "When she died 3 months ago, I found I couldn't do it anymore. The bread wouldn't rise properly. The texture was wrong. Everything I made tasted like ashes in my mouth. Margaret tried to help, tried to follow Alice's recipes, but it wasn't the same. We were failing. After 40 years of success, we were making bread that was merely adequate instead of exceptional, and I couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear to dishonor Alice's legacy like that." Watson has risen and crossed to the old man, sitting beside him with a quiet compassion that makes him such an excellent physician. "So you've been coming here at night," he says gently. "Baking in secret?" Samuel nods. "I found I could do it if I pretended she was still here. If I came in the darkness, when the bakery was quiet and empty, I could feel her presence. I could remember her voice telling me to add a bit more water to the dough, to let it prove a little longer, to check the oven temperature with my hand the way she taught me. In the night, with no one watching, no one expecting anything, I could bake the way she taught me, and for a few hours it was as though she hadn't left at all." "But you couldn't let Margaret know," Holmes says, understanding dawning in his voice. "She would have insisted that you rest, that you stop pushing yourself. She would have worried." "She would have made me stop," Samuel agrees. "But this bakery was Alice's life, and I couldn't let it fail. I couldn't let her bread, her perfect, beautiful bread, disappear from the world. So I came in secret and I baked, and for those few hours in the deep night I was with her again." The kitchen falls silent, except for the soft sound of Samuel's tears. You feel your own throat tighten with emotion, moved by the old man's devotion, by the power of love that extends beyond death, that drives him from his bed in the coldest hours to labor in honor of his lost wife. Holmes stands quietly for a moment, and when he speaks again, his voice carries a warmth you've rarely heard from him. "Mr. Hartley, I believe you have been too hard on yourself. The bread you make during the day, I've tasted it myself only yesterday, and I assure you it is excellent. Your wife taught you well, and her skill lives on in your hands. You don't need the cover of darkness to honor her memory. You honor it every time you bake, whether at midnight or at dawn." Watson adds his own gentle encouragement. "You're exhausted, my friend. You're running yourself into the ground with these nighttime labors. Alice wouldn't want that. She would want you to take care of yourself, to rest, to trust in what she taught you." Samuel looks between the two men, and then at you, sitting quietly on your bench, and something in his face begins to shift. The terrible tension that has held him rigid begins to ease, and his shoulders lower slightly, as though some burden has been lifted. "Margaret knows, doesn't she?" he says softly. "It's not quite a question." "She suspected," Holmes confirms. "She asked me to investigate not because she believed in ghosts, but because she knows her father, and she was worried about you. This elaborate mystery was her way of bringing help to you without wounding your pride. A sound that might be a laugh or might be a sob escapes Samuel's throat. That girl, she's so like her mother. Alice would have done exactly the same thing. The dough has risen now, doubled in size beneath its cloth covering, and Samuel stands slowly, his joints creaking with age and weariness. "I should finish," he says. "The ovens are ready, and it seems a waste to let the dough spoil." "Then let us help you," Holmes says, removing his coat and rolling up his sleeves. Watson does the same, and you rise from your bench, ready to lend whatever assistance you can. Together, the four of you work in the candle-lit kitchen. Samuel shapes the loaves with his practiced hands, showing Holmes and Watson the proper technique, patiently correcting their attempts with gentle humor. You help to prepare the proving baskets, to brush the tops of the loaves with water so they'll form a perfect crust, to slide them into the waiting ovens with the long wooden paddles called peels. The work is soothing, rhythmic, almost meditative. The warmth of the ovens, the yeasty smell of the proving dough, the quiet companionship of working together toward a common goal, all of it combines to create a sense of peace that settles over the kitchen like a benediction. As the bread bakes, Holmes makes tea, and the four of you sit around the work table, sipping the hot, sweet liquid and talking in quiet voices about Alice Hartley, about the bakery, about bread and love and loss, and the ways we honor those who have left us. Samuel speaks of his wife with a tenderness that makes the air in the kitchen feel almost sacred. He tells stories of their early days together, of how she taught him to distinguish between different flowers by feel alone, of the first time they successfully created the sourdough starter that still lives in its crock in the corner, descended from a culture that Alice's grandmother had brought from France 70 years ago. She used to say, Samuel recalls, his voice soft with memory, that bread is alive. The yeast is alive, the starter is alive, and when you work with them, you're not just following a recipe, you're collaborating with life itself. She said that's why no two loaves are ever exactly the same, because each one is its own small miracle. The scent of baking bread fills the kitchen now, warm and comforting and perfect. Through the window, you can see that the fog is beginning to thin, and the first hint of dawn is touching the eastern sky with the palest shade of grey. Holmes rises and opens the oven doors, and the loaves inside are golden and beautiful, their crusts perfectly formed, their shape exactly right. He draws them out carefully and sets them on the cooling racks, and the four of you stand around them in silence, paying homage to these simple, perfect things that Samuel and Alice Hartley have created together for 40 years. "They're beautiful," Watson says quietly. "Absolutely beautiful." Samuel nods, but he's looking past the bread, past the kitchen, to something or someone only he can see. "Yes," he says, "she'd be pleased." Holmes places a hand on the old man's shoulder. "Come," he says gently. "Let's take you home. You need rest, and Margaret will be waking soon. Perhaps it's time to tell her the truth about how tired you've been, about how much you've missed her mother, about how hard you've been trying to maintain the bakery's standards. I think you'll find her more understanding than you fear." Samuel allows himself to be guided toward the door, but he pauses to look back at the cooling loaves, at the kitchen that has been the center of his life for so many years. "Will I be able to do it?" he asks, and there's a child's vulnerability in the question. "Will I be able to bake as well as she did?" "You already do," Holmes assures him. "You always have. The only thing that's changed is that now you must believe it yourself." You leave the bakery as the dawn is breaking, the fog retreating before the growing light, revealing London in all its morning glory. The streets are still quiet, but here and there you can see signs of the city waking, a maid scrubbing steps, a milk cart making its rounds, the first shopkeepers opening their doors to greet the day. You walk slowly back toward Baker Street, Samuel Hartley supported between Holmes and Watson, his steps growing more confident as the light grows stronger. By the time you reach Marylebone Lane again, Margaret Hartley is just arriving at the bakery, her key in her hand, ready to begin the day's work. She sees her father and understands immediately. Without a word, she embraces him, and you see the old man's shoulders shake as he finally allows himself to cry in earnest, to release the grief and fear and exhaustion he's been carrying alone for these long months. Holmes quietly explains the situation to Margaret, his voice low and respectful, and she listens with tears streaming down her own face. When he finishes, she nods and thanks him, and then she leads her father into the bakery, into the warmth and the scent of fresh bread, into the place where he and Alice built their life together. The three of you, Holmes, Watson, and yourself, continue your walk back to Baker Street as the sun rises fully over London, burning away the last of the fog and revealing a city bright and clear and full of promise. The mystery has been solved, not with dramatic revelations or criminal confrontations, but with compassion and understanding, with the recognition that sometimes what appears to be a mystery is simply a manifestation of love and loss and the very human need to hold on to what we cherish. When you reach 221B, Mrs. Hudson has breakfast waiting, eggs and toast and strong coffee, but somehow none of you are hungry for anything but the bread that waits back at Hartley's bakery. Holmes promises to return later for a loaf, and Watson agrees to check on Samuel in the afternoon to ensure he's resting properly. As you prepare to depart for your own home and your own bed, Holmes shakes your hand with genuine warmth. "Thank you for your company tonight," he says. "It's good to be reminded that not all mysteries involve crimes, and that sometimes the most important thing a detective can do is simply to understand, to bear witness to another person's pain, and help them find their way through it." You leave Baker Street as the morning traffic begins in earnest, as London shakes off sleep and begins its daily bustle. But you carry with you the peace of the night, just past the quiet of the foggy streets, the warmth of the bakery kitchen, the gentle resolution of a mystery that was really a love story all along. And tonight, when you lay your head upon your pillow, you'll remember the scent of baking bread, the kindness in Holmes's grey eyes, the strength in Samuel Hartley's weathered hands, and you'll know that in this vast city full of mysteries and wonders, there are still places where love endures beyond death, where tradition and skill are passed down like treasures, and where even the great Sherlock Holmes sometimes solves a case not with logic alone, but with compassion and heart. The bread will rise tomorrow at Hartley's bakery, just as it has for 40 years, just as it will for 40 more. And somewhere, in whatever place the departed dwell, Alice Hartley smiles and whispers the secrets of perfect bread to the wind, knowing that her husband heard her, knowing that her legacy is safe, knowing that love, like the sourdough starter in its ceramic crock, lives on, passed carefully from one generation to the next, eternal and alive and sustaining as bread itself. Sleep now, as Samuel Hartley sleeps, finally at peace. Sleep as the morning bread cools on its racks, as London wakes to another day, as Holmes lights his pipe and Watson opens his newspaper. Sleep deeply and well, wrapped in the warmth of this gentle mystery solved, this quiet triumph of understanding over confusion, of love over loss. And may your dreams be filled with fog-wrapped streets and the golden glow of gas lamps, with the scent of bread baking in the deep of night, and with the certain knowledge that even in the darkest hours there are those who watch over us, who understand us, who help us find our way home. Rest now, the mystery is solved, The bread is baked. All is well. Sleep.